So we are moving up the panel. So if you're following the agenda, we are on the panel session D. And I'd like to introduce to you an amazing and dear friend of mine, a Chief Commercial Officer, Managing Director of Port Long Beach, Noel Hacegaba, to moderate this panel for us. Give a round of applause. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Nick. Very kind of you. Good evening. Good afternoon. Boy, this is going to be a long panel. But good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see you all again. In the interest of time, we're going to get right into it, but not without first setting up this panel. This morning, for those of you who were here, I think we got a pretty good macro view of why we're here, the need for digitizing the supply chain, the components that are out there today that will help us to get us there. I think there was the business case for the supply chain data was pretty well established this morning. We also had a very intriguing panel on preparing America's workforce so that those who are actually working within the supply chain have access to this data and know how to manage it. And then just a few moments ago, we had a very intense and very interesting dive into blockchain. And there will be a quiz about that afterwards, so I hope all of you paid very close attention. But now I'd like to draw your attention to what brings this panel together. And we've got a very distinguished panel, I must say. The panel is Comprehensive Port Supply Chain Information Flow and Data Visibility. U.S. ports and supply chains need to consider implementing port community IT systems in order to keep pace with rapidly changing trade trends and maritime carriers' increasing use of container megavessels on their U.S. routes. This panel explores this very fundamental question. How is better port supply chain information flow and data visibility being achieved through port community IT platforms and by improving cooperation, coordination, and information sharing between individual ports and their stakeholders and users? So that's the question that this panel of experts will attempt to answer today. And so our first speaker is Bruce Harsh. Bruce Harsh is the Director of Supply Chain at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Bruce Harsh brings more than 30 years of international trade experience to manage a broad portfolio of services and advisory committees, including the Advisory Committee on Supply Chain Competitiveness. His team specializes in resolving challenges in distribution services and the movement of goods and services for air, sea, rail, and highway transportation modes, which also requires an extensive understanding of numerous dynamics such as IT systems, retail, security, infrastructure, licensing, and sustainability. Bruce has also developed and led trade missions throughout the world, including the first ever retailing and franchising trade mission to China and direct marketing missions to Europe. He's received numerous awards from the Department of Commerce, including its Gold Medal Award for his work on reducing trade restrictions in distribution services. And he's also worked for a Fortune 100 company prior to joining the Department of Commerce. So ladies and gentlemen, let's give Bruce a warm welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. So, to Jonathan, bonjour. That was from this morning, trying to, there you go, bonjour, guten Tag. We were talking about the different languages earlier, so you had to be here this morning to be with Jonathan Rosenthal to get it across. So with regard to this afternoon, good afternoon. First, I want to thank USC for hosting this great event. There's just been an incredible amount of information that has been shared, and I greatly appreciate everyone taking time out from their busy schedules just before the Thanksgiving holiday, and even with the USC-UCLA game coming up tomorrow. Many thanks to our USC partners for all their hard work to spearhead and host this event. I don't have a prediction for it to score tomorrow, but for the score of the game, but I do know that winning will take better communication, coordination, collaboration to win. And that's the same for winning the hackathon for this weekend. This panel, today's conference and this weekend have a major potential significance for American ports and supply chains. This weekend's panel is intended as a scene setter for this weekend's hackathon. The background behind this event is crucial to knowing what the hackathon is meant to do and what it needs to achieve. achieve. Today, we've discussed what we can do together to help our supply chains move from paper to digital and to implement technologies that revolutionize how supply chains communicate, share data, and plan their operations and do business in the 21st century. America's ports handle some 70% of supply chains' global merchandise trade, representing, you heard earlier, the number of boxes and bulk shipments that were moved just in this one area alone in the country, but it replicated across, and it's a huge amount of movement of goods and services represented. That makes it particularly appropriate and right that the DOC-USC technology partnership begins with the port sector. Ports and supply chains are vital to America's success. They have been disrupted by constant challenges and systems that shocks over the past few years. These include aging operations and inadequate infrastructure, collapses in equipment availability, rapid changes in trade demands, the side effects of stalled labor negotiations, weather emergencies, and now Hodgin Shipping company bankruptcy. And on the horizon is the impending arrival of some of the world's largest container vessels, which must be handled quickly and efficiently, or all cargo movement through the ports and supply chains will be affected. Over the past year, Secretary Pritzker and the department have been working closely with ports and stakeholders to help them identify how they can work together better to move cargo. And this is crucial to improving America's industrial, job, and economic growth to keep us a stronger competitor in the global economy. Secretary Pritzker has conducted a number of best practices roundtables this year with key U.S. ports and stakeholders to learn what they have done together to overcome their efficiency challenges and move cargo and trade more quickly. And the Secretary has traveled to one of the world's most efficient ports, the Port of Hamburg, to learn how they have been able to handle these giant vessels without stalling the flow of trade. Commerce's Advisory Committee on Supply Chain Competitiveness has also issued several recommendations on port congestion and efficiency issues. The committee's recommendations are part of the basis of today's event. Several committee members are in the audience, including Gene Soraka, Paul Bingham, you heard this morning, and Leslie Blakey. Their committee work is important, and I want to thank all the committee members who are here today. One of the key lessons we learned is that it's a best practice for America's port and stakeholders to implement information-sharing port IT systems, also known as port platforms. These IT systems allow port stakeholders, including terminals, labor, cargo owners, truckers, railroads, and others, to share the cargo data they need in advance to move containers quickly and efficiently from megavessels through the ports and supply chains to the cargo's ultimate destination. To be usable, port platforms must be cost-effective, easy to use, secure, interoperable with other systems, flexible, resilient, affordable, and most importantly, able to meet the needs of each port and its full range of stakeholders. As they say in the port industry, once you've seen one port, you've seen one port. Each port is unique, and which is owns needs, capabilities, cargo mix, and supply, and is unique with its own needs, capabilities, cargo mix, and supply chains. That means that there needs to be a range of different port platforms available in the United States, and so that each port and its stakeholders can select and customize the system they need. The hackathon is intended to boost the development of these systems in the United States. Over the weekend, the hackathon participants will design innovative prototypes that can be the basis of future port platform products. The winning entries will be those that best meet the usability criteria I've just described, and that can help catalyze the use of these systems at ports throughout the United States. As we go into the hackathon, I want to commend the Port of Los Angeles and GE Transportation for their work to pilot a new port information portal at Los Angeles Port. This pioneering IT system is a major advance for the port and for all U.S. ports and shippers by demonstrating both the value of these technologies and the strengths of industry's interest in them. We look forward to the success of this pilot, and to the Port of LA and GE, thank you very much. And thank you again for USC for this day and for this shared vision. And thank you for your attention.
Excellent, Bruce. Thank you very much for laying the groundwork and once again putting the rest of your panelists and their presentations in its proper context. I made note here of what you said about these port community systems, how they ought to be cost-effective, affordable, easy to use, and flexible. So we'll get back to that in the Q&A. But in the meantime, thanks again for that. And you did mention that you have no prediction for the USC-UCLA game.
I talked about that.
I do,
Said win.
but I will not announce because I got the World Series wrong, and I think all of us got the presidential election wrong, so I'll keep that to myself. Our next speaker is Henrik Jensen. Henrik Jensen is the author of the leading book in Scandinavia titled Service-Oriented Architecture. And he is here today working at Maersk Line New Ventures, exploring possibilities for using digital solutions to optimize global supply chains. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Henrik Jensen to the podium.
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. I've been looking very much forward to this one here. I'm working in what you said in New Ventures in Maersk Line, and what we're doing there is we try to look at 3, 4, 5 years out on the horizon, try to see what is there for digital technologies that is relevant for us, but especially for the supply chain in general. And what I'm going to present here is an idea, as you probably can guess, is then fostered around 3 or 4 years ago, and we in the meantime had some PhD looking into it and actually understanding is that really the problem. And I think you will see here that this is going to address a lot of the issues that we've been talking about here. We call it the shipping information pipeline, or it's also said the internet for logistics, because what we really is trying to do is we try to do for logistics what the internet has been doing for business here. Meaning, if you think about what is fantastic with the internet, it is the fact that you can set up a homepage anywhere around the world, and without even testing, without even thinking about it, you know that anyone with a browser, whether it's in South America or it's Explorer here in North America or anywhere else, they'll be able to access your homepage. And the same is the vision with the shipping information pipeline. We put a logistic layer on top of the internet, and which means that you will be able to connect your system with all the access that you will be working with, and exchange events with these systems, and exchange the documents that is needed in a global supply chain. So, and I forgot the. So, yeah, my colleague Al has already presented what Maersk Line is, but I also understand that there's a number of the participants in the hackathon, so I just want to highlight a little bit about the Maersk Line. As you can see, we are in a number of regions. We are all over the world. We have, let me just see, in 160 countries, around 30,000 employees, and have 59,000 customers worldwide that we're shipping containers for every year. A few highlights or a few interesting things which I also find fascinating with this industry. I mean, it is the size of the industry here. So, for example, I mean, the number of containers we have, you had to stack 8,550 Eiffel Tower on top of each other for the same amount. I mean, it's just impressive to see. And also, I mean, each box you see can contain. I'm impressed about how much that actually can contain. I mean, 48,000 bananas in a 20-foot container. So there's a lot of things in there. And I would say in general, we also see that the physical infrastructure in our industry, it works actually okay. There is some challenges here and there, but the information, the way the information flow, as we have been talking about here, is just not good enough. One of the examples that we really haven't touched on is what does this mean for the authorities. And I'll just come with an example. As you can see here, in the old days, before the containers, I mean, the captain was down on the quay looking at everything that was going on his vessel, so he knew what was on what he has on his ship. And the rules is more or less still the same. I mean, we have been asked when we come with a container here in LA, I mean, it's actually us you're asking. I mean, if it's our reefer, did we pack it? Do we know what it contains? And we actually do not know all these kind of things. This is not visible for authorities and for anyone else what is actually in the container. So one of the examples there, and you can see, would you be allowed on the plane if you got the same answers to the luggage here? No doubt. But this is the normal procedures everywhere around the world regarding containers. And the reason for that is, as we also heard several times in the panel here, is that all communication in our industry typically happens with a peer-to-peer, with a one-to-one connection. It typically follows the next one in line, the next one that has the container. So that information is then summarized, it's duplicated, it's sent just to the next one in line. And this means that nobody has the full overview of what is actually happening with the container. There's a lot of black boxes in our industry. So when the container comes into the terminal, only the terminal knows what's happening. Then it comes on our vessel. We know what's happening on our vessel. Then it's on a truck. Then the truck driver knows it. But there's no shared visibility among all the actors. As I mentioned, we had a PhD looking into what is the consequences of this one here, and he looked particularly on avocados and flowers from Kenya to Rotterdam. And some of the interesting observations he did was this too here. First of all, the administrative cost, meaning handling the information around a container, that is similar to the cost of the physical transport, which means that we are actually transporting a box halfway around the world, but the cost of handling the information is more or less the same. One of the reasons is also one of his observations. I mean, he has been sitting on top of containers, talking to everyone that touches that container during the journey in Kenya and in Rotterdam again. Probably one of the few people in the world that actually has followed the full container and has got a copy of all the papers. I mean, and it's this amount of papers that is produced for each container. And as you can see, he actually found out there's more than 30 actors involved, and they are exchanging information more than 200 times. And that's information that can stop the container. There's more information this one. I mean, 200 information exchanges just to get a box from Kenya to Rotterdam. And that happens millions of times every day in our industry. So what we have said to do, we believe we can do this smarter. I mean, we are in the internet right now, or we have the internet right now. And if we can, there we are. So what we are suggesting to do, or what we are working on building, is this shipping information pipeline, which is a shared infrastructure, which you connect to once, and then you're able to exchange events and documents with everyone else on the that is involved in your supply chain. And I'm going to go a little bit more detail into exactly what it is that's, One of the things we have seen, or we had some investigation around it. I mean, this will expect we can take out $27 billion of the transport cost by having one single interface. One single infrastructure that you could connect to. It's also important that I'm saying it's an infrastructure. We are not going out building solutions. It is designed so you keep your existing solutions, whether it's the port community system, it's a supply to visibility system, or whatever systems that you have. You keep this one here, but we are just the infrastructure that connects all these things here. As I said, exactly just as the internet. We are not building the home pages. We are just making the infrastructure to make sure that everyone is connected. In order to do that, we have set up a number of principles. because I will just go in then decides who's going to have access to this one here. The other one, neutrality. Although we don't understand exactly why, but we have seen that shippers is using other carriers than us. We need to make sure that everyone can benefit equally from this one here. So this is not, the purpose is not building a Maersk line solution. The purpose is to build, again, an internet for logistics. So, and we definitely need to make sure it is just as neutral as the internet, so everyone can benefit equally from that one. We can also accept that, or we also need to accept, of course, there's different legal things in the different worlds. There are different processes. There's different standards, etc. So we also build the infrastructure, so it is what we call fault tolerant. So we do not require that everyone has the same processes. We need to accept, of course, that everyone can have the individual processes, but the infrastructure will be able to cope with that. We cannot force a Kenyan truck driver, for example, to make sure he's already sending the events or doing the right sequence. So that's also an important part of it. And the last thing, and that is just probably repeating myself, it is just a digital infrastructure we are building that connects each of yours individual systems to all the other ones. I'm going to skip this one here. Just to try to illustrate how it will look like. Although this one here is of course some kind of solution, this is just to illustrate what it is that we have, or what opportunities this will bring you. So you can see here, you will get a complete overview of all the events that is happening to the container. So from it departed the empty depot in Kenya until it came into the warehouse in Kenya, until departed in Kenya, until we got to Mombasa, and etc. All the other events along the way. One of the things I heard you need to know is when does a truck, for example, come in? When can I expect the truck comes here? As you can see here, you will get an event from the trucking driver saying, I expect to arrive at this time, or depart at this time from the warehouse, or arrive at this time here to the terminal. And the same thing from the on the other hand, when will they come and pick up the container? So all events regarding the container available via the infrastructure to each party, or to everyone involved in the supply chain. And just a little bit, also another example of how it could look like, with some more details about the event and related documents, which is also important that we also is working on digitalizing the documents, and we're working with blockchain, as we just had before in the panel, about how can we actually in a trustworthy way digitalize all the documents that is in world trade. Last slide I'd just like to show. I mean, I talked about this $27 billion that would take out of the total transport cost. This slide up here, it shows some numbers from World Economic Forum. They looked at what would it mean if countries, of regions, reduce their supply chain barriers. There's of course more to it than just the administrative barriers that the shipping information pipeline will reduce, but it is a significant part of this one here. And let me just explain you what it is you can see. I mean, the colors of the different regions shows the increase in GDP if countries reduce their supply chain barriers just halfway to global best practices. And the dark blue is how much will the trade increase with the export and the import. And as you can see also for the US, although the GDP will not increase that much in percentage, it's still an 11% increase in export, and 7% increase in import. So there's some interesting numbers and some interesting consequences of just reducing the supply chain barriers that will happen with the digital, with the digitalization of all the events. Especially we have been looking at Africa, and as you can see, that will have a significant impact on the economies in Africa, removing some of the barriers there, and actually taking people out of poverty as well. So that was what I had to say about what we've been working on here. We will be piloting for in different parts of the world together with Port of LA here and the GE. We will be piloting it, but hopefully also with others as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Henrik. Very well done. Shipping information pipeline, also known as the Internet for Logistics. And I want to reiterate a point that Henrik made, and it goes back to an earlier panel on the business case for supply chain data. Listen to this. The administrative cost of handling a container shipment is comparable to the cost of the actual physical transport. So when you look at improving the movement of cargo, it beckons the call to improve the movement of data, because that's what will get us there. And in your presentation, you point out a figure of $27 billion that you believe you can extract simply by digitizing all the information exchanges. So more questions on that. In the meantime, I'd like to introduce our third and final speaker for the panel. This is Steve Balaski. He's a senior manager of business development at the Northwest Seaport Alliance. Steve manages business development efforts for the Northwest Seaport Alliance, the newly formed marine cargo operating partnership of the ports of Seattle and Tacoma. Under the alliance, he is focused on developing new opportunities with Pacific Northwest exporters, local and national importers to utilize the Northwest Seaport Alliance container gateway in their supply chains. Steve's background includes 20 years in the maritime transportation and logistics industry. Prior to joining the alliance, he held operations and business development positions with Crowley Maritime and Horizon Lines, and most recently he was with APL as senior account manager, where he had sales and contract negotiation responsibilities. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Steve Balaski.
Thank you, Noel, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. Real quickly, I do need to say, being from Seattle and being a UW grad, I had a slightly different reaction to the USC band this morning. As the Trojans were taking it to the Huskies last weekend, we heard that band a lot. So anyway, again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and the chance to share a little bit about what we're doing up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm going to try and provide a port perspective on some of the concepts that have been talked about this afternoon. But to set the stage for those of you who may not be as familiar with the port industry, real quickly, the Northwest Seaport Alliance is a marine cargo operating partnership between the ports of Seattle and Tacoma. We actually celebrated our 1-year anniversary in August of this year. It's an innovative partnership that we aren't aware of that's been done before. So we're definitely learning as we go. But what it does is we are a port development authority that manages all the container and cargo terminal assets on behalf of the two home ports. So in effect, we are acting as a single port gateway, even though there are two ports approximately 30 miles apart, as you can see on the slide. And with this combination, we are, in terms of volume, the fourth largest gateway in North America. And one of our stated goals is to be the gateway that is the easiest to do business with. So we're working on things to try and reach that objective. And again, for the hackathoners in the room, and for those of you who again aren't as familiar with the port industry, just to present the problem here, what you see here on this slide are two harbors. On the top, you see the Port of Seattle. On the bottom, you see the Port of Tacoma, and we have 10 terminals across the two harbors. And we are also, as you heard earlier, we're a landlord port, so we own the land and lease it to the terminal operating companies, who in turn manage those facilities. And these terminal operating companies are competitors. So we talk about the challenges around sharing of information. We are faced with that same challenge. How do we work with competitors to encourage them to share information, collaborate for the betterment of the entire gateway? We see our role similar to what Commissioner Renwick stated about the Port of Los Angeles. We are, you could say, similarly a hybrid port in terms of we're trying to take a more active role in port operations to find ways to make ourselves more efficient. The other challenge, in addition to the many terminal operators, and this has been talked about already today, is the introduction of ultra-large container vessels into the trade. This is a photo of the Benjamin Franklin. It called our North Harbor, the Port of Seattle, early this year, and it's an 18,000 TEU ship. This ship is also obviously called here in Southern California in Oakland, but it's the largest container ship to call the West Coast to date. What it does is it concentrates the number of containers hitting a facility at one time, whereas in the past, those volumes would have been more spread out over the week over smaller ships. So that creates some challenges and pressures at the terminal level. So what we're trying to do is ensure that terminals in this situation remain fluid, and the trucks can get in and out of the facilities quickly. The other challenge that we face, similar to this, is, as has been talked about already today, is the need for information. And not just the need for information, because at the terminal level, at the container level, this information is being managed and communicated. But when you get across multiple terminals and multiple harbors, that just adds to the complexity. So these are just some common examples of questions that that the local supply chain is trying to answer on a day-to-day basis, not just at one terminal, but harbor-wide. Where is my container? When will the ship be here? Can the warehouse receive this? The terminal wants to know when is the truck coming in to pick up these containers. My favorites, when did this change? And why didn't anyone tell me? And we're hoping that we need to address that, because these are common questions and they happen on a regular basis. And I think that speaks to, it was mentioned earlier, the idea of precision logistics, because shippers are drilling down even farther into the marine container supply chain. They want to know, where's the container on the ship? When is it coming off the ship? Where is it in the yard? When can I pick it up? I mean, they're getting very, very precise, and so that demand is increasing, and it makes it more complex with these size vessels. So what we're trying to do at the port is talking about the port community systems concept. One item we're implementing from a technology standpoint is an application called DreQ. This is something that's already in place at the Port of Oakland, but what it does is provide visibility to total turn times for trucks at the gates, and basically gives you a snapshot of the activity level at a terminal in terms of what's my average wait time. Traditionally, this has been measured what's called pedestal to pedestal, so when the truck gets to the entrance of the gate until it leaves the gate or leaves the terminal having completed its transaction. But in reality, the line doesn't start at the gate. It starts outside the gate. There's a queue. And this is what we feel is step one in trying to provide information to help with gate fluidity, because as has been mentioned already, the truck capacity is a concern, truck driver retention is a concern, and it's very, very difficult for the drayage community in today's environment to be sustainable, to make money, to earn a profit. And so this is something we're very focused at the port level, is how do we help that trucker earn a living? how do we make that trucker more productive? Because frankly, without the trucker, the supply chain, at least at the port level, collapses. So it remains a very big focus for us. And I should say that we are targeting to roll this out by the end of this month, hopefully by December 1st, December 2nd. So what we envision is that this dray cube also becomes part of a broader port community system. And again, the concept's already been brought up. But what we're trying to do is we feel that every stakeholder in the supply chain, especially at the local port level, has a role to play in ensuring terminals are fluid and ensuring that trucks can get as many turns per day as possible. So what we're envisioning is, and what we see is a siloed communication, as I mentioned earlier. Truckers are talking to one terminal and they know that information, but there could be an issue at another terminal, and it's just trying to coordinate that dispatch so that trucks aren't getting hung up at a busy terminal when they could be taken into one that has less activity that day. So, as this depiction illustrates, we're envisioning something that's centralized web-based portal that captures shipment and dray information for cargo moving in and out of the facilities. And we also envision this being a real-time portal so that truckers and shippers can react. And it also allows ultimately the terminal operator to plan as well. They know what's coming into their facility so that they can plan their labor force accordingly. And finally, just to summarize, these are some of the key objectives we hope to gain from this port community system. I mentioned that it'd be centralized, although with this discussion with blockchain, we may need to rethink that. But definitely real-time visibility to shipment data, and then terminal fluidity, truck drayage productivity, improved communication, collaboration, and supply chain planning. Similar themes that have been brought up throughout the day. We're frankly very happy to see that this is something that is being embraced, and we're looking forward to working more on it going forward. So thank you very much for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Let's see if this one works. This one works. Does it work now? This one. There we go. Excellent. Thank you very much, Steve, for that. Just for the record, Nick, we're going to have to give him a different gift because I think each panelist gets a CD of the all-time greatest hits of the USC Marching Band. We're going to give him a slightly different gift. But, ladies and gentlemen, so you've heard three different perspectives, all coalescing around the same need within the supply chain. And in the process, you've also heard two different approaches, one from a shipping line and another from a port authority. And it's interesting to see how the three perspectives converge. And now is your opportunity to ask questions. And I just want to get a sense of how many questions we might anticipate. Raise your hand if you plan to have a question. Let's see, not on blockchain. Okay. Yes. Why don't you go ahead, Bill?
Microphone?
Here's a mic. You got one? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, for Henrik, and the shipping information pipeline, now, is that going to be proprietary to Maersk, or is this just a concept that you see all of the carriers and the terminals and the truckers and BCOs participating in?
We see we see that everyone participate. The whole purpose is try to say with this neutrality, is that everyone can participate, because it has no value if it's just an internet just for Maersk, for example. I mean, as I said, that is for different reasons. There is shippers is buying containers from other than us, and we have to accept that. So if Port of LA had to use the pipeline for each shipping line, that wouldn't work. So the whole purpose is, as I said, just like the internet, everyone connects to it, everyone can benefit equally from it.
And then who would be the clearinghouse or whatever to put it all together so that, would it be like a private sector type of company or like a World Shipping Council or what?
It would be, we would expect this to be a private sector company. How the ownership is going to be, we haven't really decided.
Before we get to the next question, just a quick follow-on question, Henrik. What about your competitors, other shipping lines? Will they have access to this pipeline as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yes, in the back. Yeah. Betsy, I believe.
Changing my last name.
Okay.
I actually have a similar question for Steve, is that developing this for Seattle Tacoma, would it be something that you could maybe sell or share with other ports or shipping lines? Because it feels like you're both building the same thing, but in silos. And then dovetail on that, the wheel that you put up, railroads weren't in that. So I'm wondering if that was just a graphic on the slide, or if you are putting in railroads as well as the trucking lines and the terminal operators.
No, that's a great point. No, that was just a visual representation. No, we would want to obviously incorporate rail into that. As of today, we are developing the system as something that would be hosted by the port, and it would be primarily for shipments going in and out of the Northwest Seaport Alliance facilities. That being said, obviously this is an evolving space, and I spoke with Henrik earlier. I don't think we're tied into any one way. Would we sell this? I don't know. Being a public entity, I don't know that we would necessarily go down that road. But I just, as we develop this, we were trying to initially focus this around the unique issues of our gateway. We're very heavily export. We have a very big export market that not every other port does, which creates some unique challenges. But we are, I think we're going to be open to collaboration there.
And along those lines, I would venture to say that there would have to be a high degree of customization if we were to take any one system and try to apply it into a gateway or a port. And so that was mentioned as well. Bruce, before we get into the other question, you mentioned in your remarks that from your standpoint, this port community portal system ought to be cost-effective, affordable, easy to use, flexible. How do we get there?
Absolutely. So it's going to take as a term in Washington, D.C., a village.
Okay.
In that we've gotten a lot of good help along the way just to develop the data elements that will be used as a basis for the hackathon. We are fortunate through the Advisory Committee on Supply Chain Competitiveness, which is a 45-member advisory committee made up of a lot of different perspectives that includes folks like Gene Strachray I mentioned, and Paul Bingham and Leslie Blakey from the different different areas. And then Russell Adis is as you met earlier, is our port specialist that is coordinating the freight policy subcommittee that had generated the data elements that are listed. And so that took a number of different months and a lot of different vetting of those issues to come up with those elements, but as an umbrella, as an overview of how to develop this platform. They also suggested that we need these different characteristics involved as we go across the different platforms to make them cost effective. We can't burden our companies. There's already a lot of pressure on the port and the different stakeholders, and so that's very important that we continue to have something that's very easy to use and applicable, interoperable at the various ports.
Terrific. And since we are at an academic institution for further research and exploration, a lot of the questions that are coming have to do with the governance, right?
Right.
Who's going to manage it? Who's going to bear the cost? How are the benefits going to be distributed? Any more questions?
Bruce, have a comment?
Bruce, yes.
This Russ Adis, just wanted to build on what Bruce said. Can everyone hear me?
No, use the mic.
All right.
fine. I'm Russ Adieson with the Department of Commerce. I wanted to build on what Bruce had just said and on what people throughout this event have said about the fact that once you've seen one port, you've seen one port, and that's the same for every port platform system. The value of each system is going to lie in the ability to serve the needs of that particular port. So what Bruce was mentioning in terms of the criteria was in order for a winning entrant in this hackathon, and also, frankly, to be able to determine the effectiveness of any port platform, it has to be able to achieve the goals, because each one is going to have to be designed differently in order for these to become a widely used system that everyone can implement to their particular needs. The Port of New York is going to be different from Port of LA, everything else, and you can't have one system that will achieve everybody. So you have to have, and that's part of what this hackathon is designed to do, is to be able to lead the way to different systems that different people can customize and different ports can implement and communities can implement depending on their needs. So we're trying to expand the market availability of these systems. We're still very early in the game, but everyone knows that the only way we're ever going to be able to handle the large vessels is in supply chain-wide approach so that everyone gets the type of information they need in order to be able to move things through.
Terrific. Thank you for clarifying that, Russell. I mean, it sounds like while each system and each gateway may develop a different port community portal, and there will be a high degree of customization, that could potentially include the governance as well. So more to come on that. Nick, one more question. All right, who wants to be the lucky
man?
Yes, sir.
I got a question for the shipping company. What is the horizontal distance between the two containers on a ship? The average. The horizontal distance between two containers as they sit on top of the ship.
I don't know.
Oh, he's referring to if you stack all your containers, it's like 86,000 Eiffel Towers.
No, not tall. Between the rows.
Yeah, you're asking about the width?
On the 53.
On the 53.
I just think, how many containers? 53.
It would be very wide, sir. It's very wide.
I don't know what the
You don't know? Yeah. So you don't have the dimensions, the exact dimensions? Okay. We'll owe you that, sir. Thank you for the question. Thank you all very much again for your attention. Thank you to our panelists.
Let's go big round of applause.